Thanks for this opportunity for the update. What rural communities are reporting to us is that they're increasingly struggling to keep the social capital of their towns alive. So the reasons why people live in rural communities aren't just about having a job, but they are all about the social infrastructure and their ability to have that lifestyle. And increasingly, they're looking to different models about how they sustain their much needed and much loved services. And I think that's been one of the reasons why, so far at least, that the social enterprise programs have grabbed so much attention from the 6 communities who have already been part of it. So just a really quick is that me or you? So just a really quick recap on what the purpose of the project is. It's looking at the social enterprise business models in the way that they build economic and social capital simultaneously. A lot of this stuff is very, very embedded in cultures and communities, particularly rural ones across the Northern Hemisphere. And what's really important to that sense of there being a strong economy, a strong social capital and cultural activities happening is when you actually bring the sectors of influencers and leaders together. So the work we're doing is deliberately bringing business, community, government, education leaders together in the room to start learning the same stuff but with each other. And what we find is it's not just the subject matter that's important, but it's the new insights that come from different sectors and people going, oh geez, I hadn't thought of it from that perspective. And ultimately what this is all about is it's about creating that enabling environment for the next generation. We know that the shift from young people needing to see themselves as just a job seeker in the future to needing to be educated to have the mindset, skills and behaviours to be job creators in the future is great and is needed globally. But if we don't actually create the enabling environment in our rural areas, our young people are forced to leave. Because if they can't get their ideas into activation locally, the town where they're committed, guess what, they're leaving. So that's just the purpose behind the project. And if we can go to the next slide, because mine... So to date, we've kind of been far and wide around the councils on board so far. They've been really well attended. They've been quite incredible around people. There's obviously a need out there. People are feeling like there needs to be different tools to activate local issues that they care about, that the same old tools aren't actually tackling anymore. And so I think that's the kind of the kernel in why the uptake has been good so far. So we've had 97 local leaders and influencers involved over those 6 workshops, and really this is the start. We're contracted through our partnership to deliver in every rural council across Victoria. So the key insights so far, so this is really an aggregation of those 6 workshops that people are seeing social enterprise as a serious business model around how they sustain the things that they care about in their local community, whether that's buying their supermarket, whether it's finding a sustainable way to keep their childcare happening through running a social enterprise. It really doesn't matter what that issue is, but it's applying a sustainable, financially viable business model to it. And the idea of, where's the money come from? So what's really, really clear is that we couldn't find, we've had not one participant who said there's more money out there for their community activities or the things they care about than there was 5 years ago. So what they're realising is it's on the shoulders of the same few people to keep all of these things going, and that what they're really looking for is those non-traditional funding models, things like patient loans, things like crowdfunding. All of these things are out there and are being activated, but people kind of do need that next stage of how do we do this stuff? We don't know about this stuff yet. Obviously procurement is starting to gather traction for the way that big organisations and local governments choose their spend really carefully so that there's a social impact to to the dollar that they spend in their communities, and that's come out as a really strong theme in the workshop so far. The growing importance of valuing those people in the community that with a little bit of capacity building and learning could actually go from being someone who's operating something small to someone who's operating something really big and really significant and really meaningful in their community. And that what's the step that we need to take as a community to help this person and the team around them go from here to here. And that's outstandingly good to sort of see that in action when you see these community leaders start thinking about that stuff, because that's valuing the ideas from wherever they come and then building the capacity into really viable social enterprises in the future. And what's naturally happening is those people who have been community leaders or business leaders in these areas are starting to go, oh, you know what, we should start meeting. We should start just kind of working out what is the thing we care about changing in our town, and let's crack on and do it. And that's pretty exciting. So we've already had 3 or 4 of those communities and people who have been to a workshop ringing us up saying, okay, what do we do next? We're ready to go. You know, we're not going to do this overnight, but we want to actually tackle this and understand this stuff in a more meaningful way so that we can do more of this in our community. And that's very exciting for us. Very, very clear that people do want that those kind of how-to tools. They want advice. They want to do more learning. They want to know how they can directly support their young people to come through to be the startups of the future, to have that sort of entrepreneurial mindset. And in all of that is that sort of desire for people to be active, real mentors in the communities. And how do we re-engage those kids who are committed to our town? Education's not on their agenda anymore. They're working in our pubs, they're working in our cafes and our supermarkets, but you know, and they're part-time and they're involved in our sporting clubs and our cultural clubs. But if you ask them when they were 12 years old, was that what they dreamt of doing? It would have been no. But they're so committed to our towns, it's not funny, and yet we're not putting any effort, any mentoring, any capacity building into those young people, those ones that stay. We put all the leadership and development and mentoring the ones that are going to go off and do stuff. So that was really interesting to hear as well. So I'd like to call up, before we show a short video, I'd like to call up Gary Gaffney, CEO of the East Gippsland Shire, and Gary's been part of this program so far.
Thanks very much, Matt. We were actually one of the first shires that kicked it off, and how it came about was a couple of weeks before we came to a Rural Councils Victoria meeting where Matt and his team were showing what they were doing in social enterprise. We'd been to one of our customer service centre, and the team leader at the customer service said, oh, Gary, come out the back, I want to show you something that's going on. And it was a group of people making boomerang bags to get rid of plastic bags within their town, and this little group had come together. And we started talking about, oh, what a great little enterprise, and they were talking about all the issues and the non-training that they hadn't had, and they'd just got this thing up and running. 2 weeks later, we came across this the talk by ACRE about social enterprise, and we said, great, how do we get this down to East Gippsland? So we put our hand up, the guys came down, it was really successful. But on Monday, something really sensational happened. On Monday, there's a proposal that came up from Gallen, who were also at our one in Bairnsdale, and the council. There's a lot of young entrepreneurs, want a young entrepreneur space at our community hub. And we're putting in an application for the funding. James Flintoff up the back, that's coming your way. So, but this is what's happened out of that one thing. We've got a group of young entrepreneurs, want a young entrepreneur space to take their social enterprises forward. So these are the things to start with in your community from just one little 2-day workshop. We're now seeing these young people now want to emerge into the business area. And I think if we can get that up and running, that's another great thing that's just happened from this whole event. So thanks, Matt.
So we'll just go on and play the video if you don't mind. Thanks. A social enterprise is a business that's been specifically set up to tackle a social issue. It trades, it makes profits, and it's all about trying to create that social impact.
What I would say a social enterprise is something that predominantly is social, but that involves the community.
I thought I knew what a social enterprise is, but for me, a social enterprise is a business that when you take away any of the extra government funding or anything that might help support the business, it can self-fund and it can kind of stay on its own 2 feet and operate as a business. And part of that profits of the business, at least more than 50% of the profit is going back into the business. So that's my understanding.
Foundry is an artist collective in Bairnsdale in East Gippsland, and we only stock wares that are made by people living in East Gippsland. Everything has to be handmade, everything needs to be sustainable and have an environmental model that kind of benefits our ethos.
Social enterprise is probably, well, in some respects, the future of art. Particularly visual arts, with government funding to the arts being slashed all the time. I think we are put into a predicament where we really need to look beyond that funding. But the ideas are there, and it has made me really think about, working towards the, into the future, how we could. I'm really keen to see this keep going, these kids' workshops, and that's really important to me.
You do need to have a fair bit of drive and passion and got to have a different sort of perspective, I think.
So our workshops happen over a 2-day period. The first day is all about the business models that social enterprise represents. So we talk about some of the governance, some of the legal structures, some of the theories around how it operates. And then on day 2, we get out in the field. So we visit all the social enterprises that are in and around your community, and some of them you might not even know exist.
They were really well attended by a number of members of the community who came to it from all over our rather large municipality. And it was what we saw were people, the ideas that started to come out of people during the 2 days and how they could take this back to their communities, or how they could work with some of the things, the projects they've been working within their community to say, hey, this could be a social enterprise.
The workshop was actually really good. We brought together a range of people from all sorts of different parts of the community with different levels of experience about social enterprise and entrepreneurship, and from different parts of the Shire. And the combination of interest that people had in understanding better social enterprise, as well as looking at actual examples here in East Gippsland, really meant that people got a really intense exposure to the possibilities and some insight into what is already happening in East Gippsland and across the world. So yeah, it was really insightful.
I was a bit unsure as to what to expect. Having now gone through it over a 2-day period, they're a workshop that is designed, I think, to embrace all levels of local government in the different departments that we work in, to actually get them to understand the structures of a social enterprise and how they can actually benefit the different areas of local government that we all work in.
Social enterprises are really important in rejuvenating rural communities. The reason they're so important is that they're building social and economic capital together, and they're bringing all of our leaders together to work on the same identified social issue. So whether you're a government leader, a community leader, a business leader or an educator, there's a role for you to play in starting to rejuvenate your community so they thrive in the future, and also so young people see a great future in their town.
I think one of the important things that I saw was all the different leaders that came from a lot of the smaller towns and communities into this workshop actually brought the municipality together, saying, hey, we've got a lot of really great things that we can achieve from our small towns, and what sort of enterprises can be set up to assist people within our small towns.
We actually got to go and look at some local examples of social enterprise in our area, and it was really exciting just to see what had driven those people to kind of start operating a social enterprise, and then some of the successes and challenges in operating one. So it was really, it was good with a bit of the theory and a bit of the practice as well. So it was good to kind of balance that together.
It's really made me think about what the goals are for the future and where I want to be placing my energy. So is it in scaling up? Do we want to grow? Do we want to keep the same model but just kind of push ourselves out there in the community a bit more so they know what we're doing?
We've also found that young people really want to embrace this stuff. They really see that there's not the jobs out there for them, so they're going to have to create their own. And we're starting to see some of the adults and the influencers in communities start to recognise that, you know what, if we don't create that enabling environment for their ideas to turn into action, they might actually leave. And what a shame that's going to be for every community if their very lifeblood of the future leaves. We've had some great success so far. We've been right across Victoria. We're loving doing this work, and we're seeing people love what's happening with social enterprise and its possibilities, and we'd love to have you involved. So jump on board and book your program. We are really up and about, and we've got a huge number of dates for this year and next year. We'd like to talk to you about this year's dates. They're coming up onto the screen now, and they're also in your pack. So if you get back to work or even on your phones right now, you know, book in a date. That's what we've found is the way to kind of, and then just get it happening, and it starts to happen from there. But we've got these dates in place. We're ready to go, and people are responding well in rural communities to this sort of approach to things. And just want to say a big thank you to RCV for this initiative, because it's getting people very excited. I'll give you one tiny anecdote to finish on. There's a social enterprise based out of Shepparton that's operating in Wodonga and now Bendigo, and it happens to be a $24 million turnover social enterprise, and it actually spends $1 million of its profits every year to trying to break the cycle of intergenerational poverty in our region. And so that was one of the social enterprises profiled in one of our programs. And there's still a guy who rings me and says, that won't be right. They won't be donating $1 million. And it's actually true. We don't know of any commercial organisation up in our area that's actually donating $1 million of their profits into direct funding of young people who need support. And that's actually coming from a social enterprise. So this isn't just about the cafe down on the corner. This is about real business as well.